Hi, Dr. Ray. I love your show.
Let me show you what it looks like to be a holy person, and maybe you'll want to be holy like me.
You just patted yourself on the back.
You seem like an honest guy.
But you're a psychologist. Do you have some advice?
I don't know. I'm not going to tell you what to do.
You're my second favorite Italian person.
I think you have a way of making people feel relaxed.
She needs to feel the consequences of being a jerk.
You know, I was looking for a deeper answer.
Obviously, I'm a failure. Obviously, I'm inept.
Yes. You are awesome. Keep up the good fight, my friend.
Now, from the studios of Living Bread Radio Network in Canton, Ohio, the hometown of Mother Angelica, here's Dr. Ray.
Very nice to have you with me here on this Look Back Friday, a variant of The Doctor Is In. My little granddaughter, got some grandkids, my little granddaughter asked Pop, they call me Pop, can I have a Cinderella party, a Cinderella-themed party? And I thought about that. I'm thinking, yeah. Okay, so I talked to my wife about this, and we said, sure. So we invited all her friends over and made them clean our house. Well, that's Cinderella-themed, isn't it? Anyway, thank you for joining me here. I appreciate the company. In a moment, we shall get to your look-back calls, where previously these calls came in anywhere from a month to 2-3 months ago. Andrew Kruchek edited them to a listening length, and we will re-air them this program, and then I get to talk more about them, something I want to bring up that I didn't bring up during the call, something that could have used a little more explaining that we didn't have time to do during the call, something that spurred a topic that I really would have liked to address, but there were calls waiting. So that's what we reserved Look Back Friday for, and we'll get to those calls. We got a wide range sitting up there right now, wide range. I heard an interesting statistic. The United States has 3% of the world's children. Now, I don't know how they define childhood. I'm going to assume maybe under age 18, or maybe they cut it off at 12. 3% of the world's children. What percent of the world's toys? Now, again, I would have to ask a lot of detailed questions. How did you come up with this number? Would you go around and count them? You know, Santa Claus can't get around to every house in one night. I don't know how he does it. I remember first time asking that when I was 6. Has he got some kind of jet? How's he do it? Another house, all the houses don't have chimneys either. Then what? What if they got a dog? Yeah, that's the kind of nerd I was. The percentage of, I guess, estimated toys among America's 3% of children is 40%. I personally and professionally believe that American children are heavily overtoyed. Obviously, the advertisers are convinced you they got to have this toy for maximum intellectual development. Got to have that. Or, what's the latest, greatest? Got to have that. Pokemon cards. Got to have those, you know. Cabbage Patch doll. Got to have that back when. Every Christmas, a new fad comes out that's just is a must-have. A must-have. And so American parents rush off. So do American grandparents. Question needs to be asked: What are we sending? What message are we sending with basically a toy warehouse? What is it? Does it do any good? Many parents will say, "Yeah, it holds their interest for a little bit, then it's on to the next one." Or I've had some parents say to me, "You know, he played more creatively and longer with the 3 boxes that came with the toy." Or I bought her a 64-pack of crayons. Only when I went to school, the really cool kids had the 64-pack. mean, I would just kind of stare at it. I mean, I think I got a 16 once. I thought, hey, I'm coming in. I'm going to be showing off in the 4th grade. I got a 16-pack. Eh? No, until I sat next to Beth. She had a 64, all of which were perfectly sharpened. She never even looked my way. I realize now it was the crayons. I thought maybe it was because I was kind of a nerdy little jerk. But no, I'm going to blame it on the crayons. Kind of a variant of Mutiny on the Bounty. It was the strawberries. Well, for me, it was the crayons. But I got him a pack of crayons, and he and she, they just spent hours drawing and coloring. Yeah, I think there's several drawbacks to toy excess. One, it does teach that there's some kind of pleasure and happiness that are going to come from getting stuff. That's a big one. I think it actually works against the character you're trying to impart. 2, it fuels boredom. I mean, come on, man. That was last year's toy. Why would I want to play with that? It's boredom. 3, I've noticed that there seems to be, and this is true among adults, those who have less tend to share more. Proportionately. Proportionally, they do. The stats will show this. People who don't have high incomes are more likely to give charitably a percentage of their income that is larger. That percentage gets smaller as you gain more money. It is. That's the way it is. Also, toys, I actually believe, work a little bit against creativity. These toys are touted. Many of them are touted as intellectually stimulating toys. And I have no doubt that some of them are like that. But creativity comes from inside. It doesn't come from the toy. I think that's a selling point that the toy manufacturers have really jumped on, because everybody wants their kid to be creative and intelligent. And so we got the toy that's going to do it. And you need more of these toys. I think that also reflects America's wealth. I would imagine that a lot of countries, if they had our wealth, our income that we can use for extras, they would probably drift toward the same percentage, but they don't have it. I would think that'd be the main reason. I'm not so sure that Western countries who regale their children with less toys do it only because they see it as a path of virtue. I think it's just probably because they just don't have the income that they can use for that. And of course, everywhere you go, kids get toys. You get your hair cut, you can dig into the goodie box. Get a toy because you got your hair cut. You were really good, so we're going to get you some little trinket. CCD, you go to religious ed. Okay, well, we got this for you when you leave. Or, my daughter in kindergarten, she was a decent reader. So she would get to go to the reading goodie bag. And one day, because she was very quiet and surreptitious about this, we noticed that she had 49 different erasers. 49, the eraser caper. Hey, Annie, where'd all these come from? Well, if we read and we read our assignment and we get done and we can read an extra one, we can go to the eraser bag, and I always pick certain erasers. 49. So my wife and I suggested to Hannah, well, Hannah, I'll tell you what, babe. You pick the 2 you want and then bring the other 47 back to your teacher. Now, she didn't like that. And I think the teacher probably thought, what is with these people? Hannah earned those erasers. Yeah, but you didn't need 49 of them. 2's good. Besides, there's some research that indicates if you materially reward a behavior that you would like to see more of, you take the reward away, the behavior drops fast. Part of the problem here is it's hard to fight the culture. Grandparents will drive the Toys R Us truck up, drop a load off, be back, got another truck sitting down the block there. And it's hard to refuse. You don't want to create ill will. You don't want to look like you're ungrateful. What do you do with all this influx? Quietly get rid of it later. Of course, the kids will tell on you. My daughter told on us. Might as well not buy me another doll, Grandma. Mom and Dad just make me pick the ones I want, and then we have to give the rest away. My son didn't even realize what we were doing half the time, but Andy did. By the way, she's an attorney now in the Army. Should have saw it coming. So, given that, it's tough to fight the relatives. I remember how hard it was for my mom to cut back on the Christmas goodie list because she gave those toys to the other cousins, her other grandchildren, and didn't want it to look like she was shortchanging ours. I said, Mom, we'll tell them. We'll tell them. It's just too much. It's too much coming in. It's not their birthday. And even when it is their birthday, there's still too much coming in. Well, there's a lot of gifts you can give that are not toys. But my suggestion to parents and grandparents is don't go with the cultural flow. Don't be part of that 40% of the world's toys that are regaling our 3% of the world's children. Yeah, you're not going to make a maladjusted kid because of it. But you don't want to fight the very things you're trying to teach. Charity, selflessness, lack of materialism, all the stuff you're trying to teach virtue-wise. Now, you're not helping yourself when you let that flow just keep pouring in. Because some kids will navigate it, and other kids, it might just lay down an attitude that by age 15 they're thinking, what's next? I don't have that. I should. All righty. Take a break. Dr. Ray.
What's the deal with Dr. Ray? I mean, is he a psychologist or a comedian?
Do you own popular index mutual funds or ETFs? If so, you're automatically own shares of companies that conflict with your moral beliefs. Ave Maria mutual funds are managed to conform to pro-life and pro-family values. Long-term investors can invest in the no-load Ave Maria mutual funds. The experienced professional portfolio managers make decisions based on investment fundamentals and pro-life values. You can learn more about Ave Maria mutual funds today at 866-AVE-MARIA or visit AveMariaFunds.com.
You like pizza? Me too. And for that, we can thank our friend, Tom Monahan. First, he starts with $900 and opens one pizza shop. Then it's worldwide, thousands of shops. But all this was just a warm-up for his greatest achievement yet. He built a university.
God inspired Tom to build up generations of men and women who have a hunger to reach the world for Christ. This place is Ave Maria University.
Visit avemaria.edu to see what's next.
Hello, Steve Ray here from Footprints of God Pilgrimages. Want to celebrate some amazing anniversaries this year in France? We'll visit Normandy Beach to celebrate our heroic military for the 80th anniversary of D-Day. Also, the 100th anniversary of the canonization of St. Therese of Lisieux. Join us this October for our Saints and Shrines of France and a visit to the newly renovated Notre Dame Cathedral.
Find the Ave Maria Radio Travel tab at AveMariaRadio.net.
Underwritten in part by the following nonprofit.
Are you paying high prices with a traditional health insurance company that pays for things that violate your conscience? There's an alternative available. Solidarity HealthShare is a community of faithful individuals and families that never share into immoral medical services, all while saving you money with prices starting as low as $85 per month for singles and $512 for families. Never fund another abortion with your healthcare dollars. Call 844-313-4999 to learn more.
book series coming out. It's a trilogy. Humility for Fun and Profit. Advanced Humility, and my autobiography, My Life of Meekness. Yeah, those will be coming out here, along with the one I wrote last year, The 3 Most Humble People I Know, and How I Taught the Other 2. Okay, so if you're looking forward to those. I also wrote a book on reverse psychology. Don't buy it. Let's go to David from Texas, whose son, at age 2, has been diagnosed autistic. And as you might expect, David had some questions about that. How old is your son, and what was the diagnosis?
Well, he just turned 2 a couple of weeks ago. Mm-hmm. And my wife had been taking him to the doctor. They've been doing tests, and they told her yesterday that he was diagnosed with autism. We don't know what, that is. I want to say I'm kind of in denial, as me thinking it's not something I have to worry about too much. I told her, I'm thinking if we just treat him as, our other sons, that he'll be fine. But and both of us would like more information, but, I just don't know where to go, and I kind of don't want to get on YouTube and look up something, that I'm not that somebody's, not telling the truth, or it's not a good perspective on it. So I was wondering if you had any kind of information on that.
How was it that your wife was motivated, or maybe she wasn't, maybe this was just serendipitous, to go to the doctor and say, I think something could be developmentally awry here?
Well, he when he was, before he was even born, they did blood tests to get the gender, and during that, they discovered he had an extra Y chromosome. So he has the XYY. And with that being part of it, they started doing tests when he was born, different tests just to make sure everything was okay as far as his growth and stuff like that. So this was one of the tests that they wanted to do.
As far as I know, and forgive me, as far as I know, unless they're doing some genetic testing for some kind of genetic abnormality, you can't really do a test for autism. There's no blood test. Well, you can't do a brain scan.
I thought. Yeah, no. What they did, they put toys in front of him and asked him to play with them or see how he works with the toys or how he does it, and going off of that and questions to my wife, that was how they determined he had autism.
Well, okay, I'm not going to dispute another person's diagnosis in a professional setting. I can't do that. But if that's what they did, and if they did some history, then they made the conclusion, they made their best assessment that there were some developmental delays here. Does your little guy have any language whatsoever?
He repeats stuff that we say, but he doesn't talk on his own. He doesn't, ask for things on his own. He'll grab us by the hand and pull us to something.
Okay.
So he might be a little behind. But I wasn't too concerned about it.
Well, he may be, and he may be, and I don't know. I got to confess ignorance. I do not know all the possible ramifications of an extra chromosome. I would imagine there are some, and maybe developmental delays and some cognitive struggles could be one of them. Language delays. Here's what I can tell you. Generally, and I think the professionals would tell you this too, the younger the kid when certain diagnoses are made, the more you can't know what it's going to lead to. So we really don't know what this name autism is going to mean for your son. We don't know that. If, in fact, there are some language delays, maybe he doesn't comprehend or understand like you'd want him to, or like your other kids did at that age, okay, so now we know you got some delays. When we adopted my 3-year-old son, he had about 5 words. That's about all he had. That's it. I gave him a test, and he tested very poorly, bottom 5%. Well, that son right now is functioning quite well in life, and he has a job where he makes $100,000 a year. So, granted, he still sometimes intellectually doesn't comprehend things as well as maybe somebody with a little more resources, but he's doing pretty good. So what I'm saying to you is, let's not panic. You have no idea really how your son is going to develop from this point forward. Here's the most important thing, David. He's your son. Whatever you call, in an umbrella word, what it is that is trying to characterize him is sort of irrelevant, because right now you deal with what he presents you with. If his language is delayed, okay, you recognize that, and you're going to deal with trying to get him a little more language skills, maybe some speech therapy. If, for example, he struggles a little bit in school, all right, you might get him some special education tutoring, those kinds of things. If there are behavior problems, you're going to probably have to be a better disciplinarian because he doesn't quite grasp it as quickly as your other kids did. But he's your son. Very unique individual with his own personality, his own developmental issues, and that's okay. You don't have to panic yet, for sure, because there's really no way of knowing how this is going to unfold. The bigger concern here, and we didn't address this during the call, was the XYY. I'm not familiar, and Andrew, maybe you can look that up while we're talking here. I'm not familiar with the common sequelae, in other words, the results, medical results, the physical results, of the XYY chromosomal abnormality. And that may be impacting this young little fella's development. Again, repetitive, they call it that. The fancy word for that doesn't mean anything, it just means repetitive speech, is echolalia. Just at age 2, you would expect, even if he's a boy, you would expect better language development. 2, 3, 4 word sentences, not just repetition. So probably there is some delay. And how that delay is going to manifest itself, they diagnosed it on the autistic spectrum because of, for example, probably certain habits or certain behavior patterns he exhibited socially, maybe. No, minimal eye contact, repetitive playing with toys, showing some early developmental lags regarding interaction with people. So given all that, David sounds like he's scared. It's like something's wrong with my kid, and then how do I deal with him? Well, at one level, you deal with him as your kid. He's your son. And whatever problems he presents you with in his development as he gets older, you will handle that. Parents will sometimes say to me, my son's 7, but from best we can figure out, kind of in a very global way, he has the maturity level of a 4-year-old. Should I discipline him? And then I ask him, well, would you discipline a 4-year-old? And he said, yes. I said, okay, then you discipline him as a 4-year-old. So, hopefully David will watch it unfold, but he won't be too panicky yet. He will handle what his son presents him with as he gets older. Very nice to have you with me. Dr. Ray Guarendi here on the Doctor Is In program variant. Look Back Friday. I really like this. I get to, well, actually, I don't like it at some level. I like it at another level. I like it in the sense that I recall why I picked that particular call so I can talk about some aspect of it more. I don't like it in the sense that few people like listening to themselves or seeing themselves. It brings to our awareness things that we didn't realize were weaknesses. Maybe a lack of articulation in expressing a particular thought during the call. Or word stumbles, word fluffs. Or word fillers, like, okay, I mean, you know. Hearing that, which normally when you're speaking, it shoots right by you. It doesn't land on your awareness. When you can sit and listen, it can be disconcerting. Only worse is watching yourself on camera. Now, I have a TV show with EWTN called Living Right with Dr. Ray. The effect of me watching it is the same. It hovers between, I didn't know I did that. Well, that wasn't. Why would I do that? Oh, stop it, Raymond. Don't. No. Because you're not aware of it when you do it at the time. Let's talk to an anonymous female from New York. This is a reverse. She is estranged from her parents.
So a quick overview of my situation. I'm actually calling because I'm getting married in 2 days, and they're not going to be there. So I thought it was a good time to call now. Basically, there was a major disagreement 1 year ago now between me, my parents, and my fiancé. It led us to postpone the wedding, but only a little bit. Of course, not enough to appease my parents, who didn't want the wedding to happen at all.
They don't like your fiancé?
No, they don't like my fiancé, and because of that, they say that they're not cutting me out of their lives, but that's essentially what has happened because occasional text messages are exchanged, but yeah, it's very difficult. I just wanted to know if you've seen this before, and if the approach would be any different than if it were the other way around. I
have seen it before, dear, and I'm sorry for that situation with you. Have they ever come clear and said, this is why we're distancing ourselves from you and your fiancé? We think he's bad for you. He's bad news. You're going to be hurt. It's going to be awful. We have no leverage. The only thing we're trying to do is to make you rethink this, and you're not rethinking it, so therefore we're staying away. Have they made that case?
Yeah, they have. There was a major fight last year. There was drama going on with my siblings, and certain, to not go into too many details, the way that certain siblings had been treating my fiance was not appropriate and unfair, and so we were trying to make changes to the wedding party to accommodate that, and that really that did not go over well.
Wait a minute, you kind of left out some of your siblings because of their treatment of your fiance, and they didn't like that at all?
I didn't even leave anyone out. I just demoted a particular sibling from the best man / maid of honor status, and that was enough to completely turn them against him. And
that they said they're not coming either. They're going to be on your mom and dad's side. I'm not coming.
Yeah.
Yow.
And they convinced the rest of the family not to come either. Even though I've heard from family members who don't agree with their decision, my mother has convinced every other family member not to come either.
What's the reason here? Is the reason that this guy is so wretched that if they in any way go to this wedding, to them they're approving of your marriage and they just can't do that? Is that how they're saying this?
Yeah, yep, exactly.
Is he that wretched?
No, and look, we had a disagreement last year between me and him and the sister and the brother, and they, there was a whole situation, but, following it, we reflected on it. We even apologized, and we've been apologizing for an entire year. They are convinced that he forced me to make the change to the wedding party and that he's abusive. Even though I've tried showing them that that's not the case, they just won't take anything I say.
He controls you. That's how they see it. and you're just being brainwashed by him, and that if in fact he says write your sister or your brother off from their position in the wedding party, that wasn't your doing, that was his, and we don't want to have anything to do with that guy.
Yep, that's exactly what happened.
Have they written you off completely?
It's tough on a phlegmatic.
Have they written you off completely, or are they just basically saying, well, we're not as close to you as we're going to be anymore?
I mean, it's not that we have no contact, so it's not like they wished me happy Thanksgiving. But I mean,
but you weren't invited.
No.
No. Were you the only sibling not invited?
Well, I mean, yeah. The other two live with my parents, so yeah.
Okay. Your parents, just as an aside here, my dear, they claim themselves to be religious followers of Christ?
So that's the interesting part, actually. They raised me Catholic. My mom's faith is definitely stronger than my dad's, but they both, took me to Mass. We went to Mass every Sunday. But my mom actually specifically thinks that my fiance is using religion to control me, because we go to traditional Latin Mass and we go to, I wear veil or whatever, and my mom doesn't like that.
Oh, he's just making you a freako.
Yeah. Even though I was the one who took us back to Mass when neither of us went for a long time.
You're going to have your marriage, and they're not going to be there. And the siblings are not going to be there, and I'm going to assume they're minors because they still live at home, or they're young adults, they still live at home. Oh, boy, you got all the elements here. This is an interesting kind of reversal. Much of the time that there is a generational rift, at least with the kind of calls I take and the kind of clients I now see, is because there's a rift in religion. Typically, it is the older generation that is more religious, and the younger generation doesn't like that. And they view that as instrumental in how they were raised, quote-unquote, poorly, or unenlightened, or counterculturally. In this case, it's reversed. The parents don't like the fact that she's expressing her faithfulness in certain ways. And, of course, they blame that on her fiancé. They see that as his brainwashing her, rather than her becoming more embracing of her faith. They've chosen to interpret it as he's messing you up. And I'm messing up because I banged up against a break. Soon as that break is over, I'll summarize and continue with this. I'm Dr. Ray. Okay, I got to summarize that last look-back call because we were so rudely interrupted by that hard break. So I'm looking back on the look-back. So for those of you who remember your early algebra, that would be a look-back the quantity squared. So that would be look-back quantity squared. Remember the binomial equations? I vaguely remember those. All right, anonymous caller. At the time that she called, so this has been long over. Be interesting to see how it all played out. 2 days before her wedding, her parents were still standing strong in their stubbornness to not go. Well, I shouldn't say stubbornness. That's value judgment there based on nothing. So they were just standing stiff on their unwillingness to attend her wedding. And the summary of it all, they don't like her fiancé. And one of the reasons they don't like him is because she's become more traditionally Catholic. They go to a Latin Mass, she wears a veil, so they don't like that. So which is a little bit of a reversal in the typical dynamic, which is the parents are more religious and the kids don't like it as they become young adults. She says they've apologized, they've tried to apologize, they've done everything they can, but the parents will not budge. Another factor in their boycotting the wedding is that she said she changed her mind on best man and maid of honor. Parents interpreted that as, first of all, betrayal to whomever she picked, which I would bet would be a family member. And second of all, that he influenced her, if not, quote-unquote, made her change. So now they've got a number of things here for resentment. She said they've tried, they've apologized. But see, here's why the apology doesn't work. Because they didn't change. She can say, he didn't force me to do this, which is, again, is a losing position. Because if she says, he didn't make me do this, then their attitude is, oh, okay, so you did it on your own, and you still dumped your sister. So either way, she loses. Until she says, and it's over now, until she would have said, okay, but let's go back to the way we were. And even at that, it might have been too little too late. Because it would have been viewed as, you should have done this willingly the first time through. You shouldn't have had to change your mind and then change your mind back. Therefore, it would have been tainted. Isn't it amazing how these kinds of events can cause enormous chasms in a family? Why? Because the parents and probably the siblings, especially if they were the ones who were switched out as best man or as maid of honor, taking it personal. How could you do this to us? Unbelievable. You weren't like this before you met him. He's the one that is poisoning you against all of us. And that's what's happening. If I were a betting man, and I am, only when I play nickel-dime poker, my guess would be this is going to get worse before it gets better. Or, as one priest told me, it's going to get worse before it gets worse. And that is, as these decisions for her family life unfold, let's say she decides to homeschool. Oh boy! Another sign of her narrow Catholicism. There's going to be more and more of this kind of friction. And unless the parents decide it's the kids' lives to live, we may not agree, but this is our daughter, and this is her husband, and we have to accept the decisions they make. They're not doing anything immoral. They're not doing anything against the law. We have to accept the decisions they make. If they don't do that, they are virtually guaranteeing, in my opinion, ongoing friction, probably to the point of complete estrangement. I thought it was interesting that this young lady said, well, we're not completely estranged. They wish me a happy Thanksgiving. Yeah, but you and your fiancé were not invited to the Thanksgiving table, so that's 99.26% estrangement. Oh, this dear lady's probably in for some bumpy times. All right, we'll take a quick break here so we can get one more call in after the break.
Don't touch that dial. Dr. Ray will be back.
Do you own popular index mutual funds or ETFs? If so, you're automatically own shares of companies that conflict with your moral beliefs. Ave Maria mutual funds are managed to conform to pro-life and pro-family values. Long-term investors can invest in the no-load Ave Maria mutual funds. The experienced professional portfolio managers make decisions based on investment fundamentals and pro-life values. You can learn more about Ave Maria mutual funds today at 866-AVE-MARIA or visit AveMariaFunds.com.
This program brought to you in part by Ave Maria, Florida, a big kind of small town where golf carts take you everywhere and there's always something fun around the corner. Discover championship golf, resort-style amenities, and a town center full of shopping and dining. With Ave Maria University and Ave Maria Catholic Church at its heart, it's a community full of connection and charm. More than 25 model homes are available for viewing. More information can be found at AveMaria.com. That's AveMaria.com.
We are the pro-life generation, passionate about building the culture of life in our healthcare and in our nation. But not all healthcare options are equally pro-life, and some provide morally objectionable procedures. CMF Curo is different. CMF Curo is a pro-life Catholic healthcare ministry providing a pathway for its members to build the culture of life in their healthcare choices, not destroy it. Learn more about CMF Curo at mycatholichealthcare.com. That's mycatholichealthcare.com.
This is Cy Kellett. Join me for Catholic Answers Live. It's 2 hours dedicated to Catholic apologetics and evangelization. Designed for Catholics and non-Catholics alike, it's your opportunity to hear from and talk with some of the leading apologists and theologians in the church today. You've got questions? We've got Catholic Answers. Catholic Answers Live, weekdays, 6 to 8 p.m. Eastern on EWTN Radio.
Look Back Friday variant of The Doctor Is In. Meg, I know why Meg was selected, because this is a particularly fascinating topic for me as a shrink, as one who believes that our culture is heavily over-psychologized, and definitely looking back on things that would explain why we struggle. At one level is understandable, but at another, sometimes they can really hold us back in our overinterpretation of our wounds. This is Meg from Texas.
You mentioned the primal wound, and for reasons we don't necessarily have to get into now, I've done a lot of reading and research about adoption and this idea of the primal wound, and it has occurred to me that at least over the course of, when I was more intensely engaged in, the pro-life movement. I mean, I'm very pro-life, but I'm also a mother of 6 now, so I don't have as much time to be engaged as much as I used to be. And there, it used to be sort of the conversation that obviously we shouldn't abort when we can just adopt. And I feel like, and I agree with that. I mean, it's obviously so wonderful that there are people who want to adopt, and sorry, this is a very sensitive topic, so I'm choosing my words carefully. But
hey, you don't have to be that careful. I'm not that careful.
But I think that maybe people in the movement, and even people who have been given up for adoption, might not be aware of the primal wound and of the fact that there's a great deal of pain, that people who are given up for adoption suffer just from, being severed from their mothers. I think a lot of people think that in that moment that the mothers who give babies up for adoption and the babies who are given up for adoption sort of in time just get over it,
Most
that
do.
there isn't any, well, I think, I wonder if there is, a lasting wound.
Well, if that's true, now, Meg, first of all, you said a couple of things here that you posited it. You said there is a primal wound. Well, first of all, that hasn't been established. Okay, that was a popular book. Basically said the premise was that when a child is, quote unquote, separated from the mom, the birth mom, and then placed elsewhere, there are things that are lost. That connection, that emotional bond. And once that's, quote unquote, severed, there are going to be long-term ramifications. This kid's going to struggle. Well, first of all, that's a nice little theory. Very nice little theory. The research essentially says that children who are not drug and alcohol exposed, who are not going through various ugly histories before they're adopted, generally do very, very well in adoption. Very well. The main factor is the stability of the family. If, in fact, they're adopted into a loving home, they would likely have done much, much better had they grown up where they were. Several of my children, I believe, would have had serious outcomes had they been left where they were. Okay?
Yeah, that makes sense. Mm-hmm.
That's the first thing. Here's the second thing. Many people will say, well, this adopted kid is really tough to raise. And so there's got to be something going on here. And there may be something to that primal wound thing, you know. Something's got to explain it. This kid's resisting socialization. He's hard to get to form an attachment with something. Well, yeah, that's true. I don't doubt that. But the research is pointing to the womb environment. You don't have a healthy womb. You got drugs and everything bathing that kid. Are you kidding me? The neurological development is really getting blasted. So that can follow a child through life. Now, all that said, my dear, your question, I think, really is the crux. You said, should we try to keep moms who wish to place their child for adoption, to keep the child, so that we don't risk the primal wound, right?
Right. That's really more broadly what I'm getting at. Yeah.
Well, if the primal wound were legit, one. Two, what kind of environment, for example, would the child have been in if he stayed with birth mom? For example, a couple of my children, their birth mom was a crack prostitute.
Yeah.
Now, if we say, well, you know, we can't risk the primal wound, so we better leave them where they are.
Yeah.
Now, these two children were forcibly taken from birth mom. But all that said, the whole idea of a child adjusting to an adoptive situation really depends a lot upon the situation, the lovingness of the parents, a two-parent family. Many birth moms are single moms, or they've got boyfriends that come in and out. So the environment's not a good one. And the kids are more likely to have struggles growing up. I know why I added this. Because it speaks to something we do a lot of. We like to narrow down, we like to deal with simplicity, the cause of something. For example, a kid who has been overseas in an orphanage for a year and a half with a lack of adult connection, a lack of stimulation, maybe some less than adequate nutrition, all the risk factors that are inherent. Or perhaps the mother had a problem with alcohol and the child was placed because she couldn't raise the child. That child's adopted. And as that child proceeds through his childhood, it's clear that he's got some learning problems. He has a struggle to form a conscience. He's a little more deceptive. He is impulsive. He gets diagnosed with ADHD, or he gets diagnosed with oppositional defiant disorder. So there's a whole bunch of stuff. If you point to something like the primal wound as the cause, in other words, he was severed from his birth mom, and therefore it has some kind of unseen neurological biochemical effects to explain all that he's going through, it definitely narrows it down, but it's confused by the fact there's a whole bunch of other at-risk stuff that is going on. There was a distinct difference in adjustment between my adoptive children who were not drug and alcohol exposed in the womb and who were. Distinct. In terms of development, in terms of intellectual abilities, in terms of ease of socialization, in terms of conscience formation, all of those things. Now, all of my children are grown now, and they are, as society would view it, they are functioning individuals doing well. Not to say that the journey there hasn't been bumpier for some than others, and continues to be bumpy, by the way. The other thing is this. You would wonder if the primal wound would drive more adopted kids to seek a birth parent. And if you listen to pop media or little shows on streaming, that there's this glorious reunion. And that can happen. Sure it can. What percentage of adopted kids do you think seek out birth parents? It's about 10%. About 10. And as I was talking to a family attorney recently, he confirmed what the research kind of says. That very often these reunions are not as glorious as they are made out to be because the birth mom is still struggling with life. And they are not something that are as smooth or even long-lasting. A couple of my kids sought out birth parents and have since ceased contact with birth parents because of the situations were so turbulent. So these are all factors involved. But primal wound is a nice theory, but very much complicated. Dr. Ray, thank you so very much. Walk with God
For
always.
information on Dr. Ray's presentations, books, and CDs, visit drray.com and follow him on Facebook and Instagram. The Doctor Is In is a co-production of Ave Maria Radio and EWTN Radio and carried across the EWTN Global Catholic Radio Network.